There'll be some meaning and interpretation that happens, and that's kind of to the side, and there'll be some anxiety, stress, and trauma responses, and those kind of come up to the side. What we're working with here is loosening up these patterns so there's some fluidity in the patterns. Okay? And that's what we begin with, and that's the first step in the training. Does that make sense? Any questions about this? Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about what's happening there when so you're saying your client is coming from caretaker, and what's happening with you?
Yeah, sure. So a countertransference that can come up is, you may notice when you're with clients who are caretakers, is you don't have to do any work and you're a perfect therapist. It's kind of nice. Yeah? Because your client is taking care of you. So when the client, and so you got to do quite a bit of work here before your client. Okay, I'm going to stay with procedural language here. Not before your client trusts you, not before they trigger you, not before they get it, before they actually can react in a different way. You're building a different muscle. So procedural memory is like you played tennis with forehand your whole life and you got no backhand. It's nice if you realize you have no backhand, but you've actually got to develop the backhand before you have one, right? If I want to run a marathon and I understand what's involved, I still can't run a marathon. I've still got to go out and run every day. So if all your client can do is caretaker, then you've got to name that trance and give them exercises and push back against it. So there's a big part of your client will be, my therapist for years called it casting spells. Your client will be casting spells at you. The procedural spells are very sober and very pervasive and stubborn. They aren't trippy, they're just stubborn. That's why we start with them. And so you've got to just not believe it, and you've just got to push back again and again and again. Right? I was raised as a caretaker, just family, extended family, friends, schools just ground into me. And I simply had to learn how to, when I would be physically hurt, I wouldn't acknowledge it. When it was cold in the winter and I wasn't wearing enough clothes outside, it was freezing cold and I just had a t-shirt or something, I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. It's like I'd so inured myself that I don't have a problem, because that's part of the trance of the caretakers. I don't have a problem. Do you have a problem? Because I'll help you with your problem. Can I help you with your problem? Right? There's all sorts of things that each of these four roles have problems thinking things. So you've got to learn your own, because sometimes clients will say things that are very attractive to you. And so you go, oh, and if it's procedural, if things feel really easy, then it may be because you're in this very nice, comfortable dance where you're in your procedural habit and they're in theirs. And you can get some nice work done, but you're never going to be able to solve that one. You'll be caught into this little dance, and you can't, there's a lot of places you can't go if you're caught in that dance. Okay, procedural, good. Anything there, or do we go on to the next one? Yep.
Just one thing I missed. You said that IPs, when they start getting into a relationship, which is it's kind of a trigger, they're the ones that they get symptomatic. Caretakers will caretake. Distancers will distance themselves. And then what was the role that will be the perpetrator?
The outcast will begin to behave in such a way that they will be cast out of the relationship.
Do you think it's possible that these roles shift around?
Some people have some fluidity.
Because I feel like I was in every single one of these roles in my family.
You could have. Let me give an example of somebody who's not you, because I want to avoid anything that relates to any of us in the room. So I've got a friend, actually, a couple people in the room know this person, who could switch very fluidly between two roles. When she was with her nuclear family, she was in the caretaker role, just all the time. But in the summer, she spent the summers with her grandparents, where there was very bad abuse. And she was in an outcast role all the time. So she flips very quickly and easily between those two roles, between savior and between caretaker and outcast. And so it'd be interesting because she'd be in a situation, she'd be in the caretaker role, and things would get more and more difficult for the caretaker role, and then all of a sudden it's flipping a switch. And it's bad behavior and crisis. There's no gradation, just boom, boom, because those are the two roles. So there's a situation with two. I just had one. Certainly, we could sit as an exercise and construct, you can do it as an exercise, construct childhoods that would give people any of the pairings of two, or all four, or any three. Yeah.
Do you find like the more complex a family system is, the more?
No.
No, that doesn't determine.
Quite often the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing, the absolutely inaccurate quote from Tolstoy, all healthy families are the same and all dysfunctional families are different in their own way. It's quite the opposite. The more the dysfunctional family, the more predictable it is. Greater variety, the more openness there is, the more intelligent the system, the more creativity and variety. Yeah.
So you're saying the problem is that when you get stuck in one of these patterns, but isn't this fluidity, I guess, how do you weigh that with differentiation and, not to jump ahead, but the ability to be fluid can be, like in this case, it's not that she's stuck in any one role, she can switch between the two. And that can be both positive and a negative thing.
All of the roles are
Okay.
positive and negative.
Okay.
Sometimes you can serve a group by being the holder of the pain or the anxiety. Sometimes you need to be able to break from a group and lose the whole group to do the right thing. Right? Sometimes you need to be able to step away from a situation even if there's terrible suffering in front of you. And sometimes you need to be able to be competent to go in and fix things and jump into the middle of it. So it's very helpful to be fluid and to have all four. There's downsides to each of the four, right? So the caretaker can be hard to relate with. There's a certain level of intimacy that's very difficult for them because what will happen is as anxiety starts to rise in the system, they don't perceive their own anxiety. They perceive that they experience a compulsion to take some care of somebody else's problems. So then this is not an accurate internal feedback loop. So they're getting bad information all the time, and that can impede intimacy. The identified patient, you see, you can just go through each one. So you want fluidity, and you want to know the healthy version of each one. Yeah.
Does it make sense to go through a little bit of each one right now? I don't know if that's...
It's your time. It's fine. Do you want to go a little bit more into each one? Is that a little bit helpful? Okay. So let's do two of them and then go on. I'm concerned with time with this. So let's look at the upside of the caretakers. You get somebody who's highly competent. Whether or not they're highly competent, they are compelled to be highly competent and take care of things. If you do that for years or decades, you develop some pretty good competent skills. So there's a certain way in which your personal skill set actually matches your role after a number of decades. If somebody's raised as an IP, as an identified patient, and they start to develop more competence, it's going to take them a long time to be as competent as a caretaker is, because a caretaker is a native speaker at competence. Everybody else is the second language. Right?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, it's whatever our role does. If we were raised with one, and I'm taking the example of raised with one, not with two or three or four, which actually is simpler. It's nice to have more fluidity. But whatever your role is, it's like you're the native speaker in that language. And when you gain fluidity, you want to loosen that up and start to learn the other ones. No matter how good you get at the other ones, you're never going to be as good at the other ones as you are at your home base one. But that's fine, so long as you're fluid, so long as you can go, oh right, I'm doing that thing, and allow yourself to go to the other ones. It's not like there's some perfectly fluid, Buddha-like, ideal that we're aiming for. We just want to loosen up the system so that your self-reflection can come in and have a vote. So you can have enough of an observer that says, oh, I'm doing that compulsive caretaking thing again. Oh, You know, every time I go into this, I want to take this class and I want to learn in this class, but every time there's upset, I start to get symptoms and I get migraine headaches and I can't hear what anybody's saying. Right, I'm compulsively taking on the identified patient role for this group. Anytime anybody's upset, I zone out. I'm always going to be incompetent. I don't want to do that. So they do exercises. You know, I'm going to sort of feel a boundary. I'm going to learn how to be more of a distancer. I'm going to learn how to not feel other people's processes. Things like that. So for a caretaker, one of them is I don't have a problem. That's an assumption walking in the room. It's a deeply profound assumption. I don't have a problem. And the second one that pairs with it is I'm responsible for everybody else here's problems. I'm responsible for the problems of everyone else. Put those two together in a machine, throw them out in the world, and you have a caretaker. Right? So can you see that almost that until you go to actual extremes of like somebody's foot's cut off or something, that person, when you put them in a group, will ignore what's not working for them and take care of other people. That's just how it runs. Right? So for the identified patient, it's, I have a problem. And I'm not responsible for fixing it. You are. I serve you in the relationship by holding the anxiety for both of us. Your job is to take care of the problems. Deal? Okay. So for the distancer, it's, I don't have a problem, and I'm not responsible for anybody else's problems. Family blows up at Thanksgiving, I'm going to go watch football in the next room. Enjoy yourselves. Right? And for the outcast, it's, yeah, I have a problem, I am a problem, and I'm not responsible for the impacts of that on anybody else.
Can you say that one again? Yes.
Yeah, I have a problem, and I'm not responsible for anybody else.
I have a
I am a problem. Okay, got a problem with that? I mean, it's that kind of an aggressive stance.
So they feel like they're not responsible for their own problem or anyone else's?
Right. Because their role in the family system, and the family, as the anxiety increases in the system and it gets more and more and more, eventually they're with the role of, we're just going to blame everything on so-and-so and drive them out of the family. And so their feeling is, screw you. You want me back? Do some work. Which is a fair thing to say to your family of origin. Of course, they're never going to change, so you're never going to get what you want, because that's what happens with families of origin. But can you see how each of these assumptions is a real problem to bring forward as a template into your intimate relationships in the future? Because then you go in and you walk in and you say, okay, so here's an interesting thing about transference in the Rolodex. We have a couple of different, we have at least two different categories in the Rolodex. We have the general Rolodex, and we have the intimate relationship Rolodex. And that's only got a handful of cards in it. And as soon as we cross a certain stage of intimacy with somebody, then we shift from our first Rolodex to our intimate Rolodex. It becomes a family transference comes alive. So you see this happen all the time with couples. So two people start dating. For some people, it could start the second the other person says, I want to go out on a date with you. For other people, it could start when the couple sleeps together. For other people, it starts with the engagement. For other people, it starts with a marriage. So you can just think about people in your life, if thinking about yourself is too unpleasant around this. Is there a place where you cross a particular line and all of a sudden your behavior changes?